My daughter-in-law had been in an accident and fallen into a coma. During one of my visits to the hospital, my grandson approached me and whispered, "Grandma, Mom isn't sick. She's pretending." Confused, I replied, "What? Don't say such things." Then he handed me his phone, and I froze in disbelief. I'm grateful you're here. If you're watching this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. I pulled the old motorcycle out from in front of the bakery, my hands still carrying the scent of flour and yeast. This morning had been busier than usual. Customers have been coming and going without pause. Each day that passed, I felt a small sense of joy seeing the warm loaves of bread arranged on the shelves, hearing the laughter and conversations of people. But what I wanted most at that moment was to get to the school, to pick up Leo, my beloved grandson. The boy was always so excited, telling me about everything that happened in class, his eyes shining, as if he wanted to show me the entire world. Just thinking about his smile made all my exhaustion disappear. I had just put on my helmet, ready to start the engine, when the phone in my pocket buzzed loudly. An unknown number. I frowned, hesitated for a second, but eventually answered. The voice on the other end was Russian cold, like a knife cutting through my thoughts. "Are you Mrs. Davis? Your daughter-in-law has just been in a serious car accident. We're rushing her to St. Gabriel's private hospital." I felt it ringing in my ears, as if the entire world had suddenly gone silent. The motorcycle wobbled beneath my hands, nearly falling to the ground. I stood motionless, gripping the handlebars, feeling as though the blood had stopped flowing through my body. My heart was pounding so hard it drowned out all the sounds around me. Emily, my daughter-in-law, whom I had always loved like my own daughter, in a serious accident. Those words echoed in my head repeatedly, but I couldn't grasp their true weight. I only knew that in that instant, I had to go see her, find out what was happening. I quickly dialed Michael's number, my son, but I only heard unanswered rings. He must already be at the hospital, I told myself, trying to stay calm. But inside me, fear burned like a fire, consuming any attempt to think clearly. I wanted to rush to the hospital immediately. But then I remembered Leo. The boy was still at school, waiting for me to pick him up. I couldn't leave him alone. I couldn't let him find out from strangers. I had to be strong for Leo, for Michael, for the entire family. With a burning heart, I sped toward the school. The city streets seemed more crowded than ever. Every car, every horn was a wall holding me back. Every second that passed felt like a stab. I wondered, how is Emily? Is she in pain? Is she conscious? Images of a brutal accident flashed through my mind, and I had to force them away. I could only pray, murmuring the prayers my mother had taught me as a child, begging for a miracle. When I arrived at the school gate, I saw Leo waiting, hugging his superhero backpack. His little face lit up when he saw me. His eyes sparkled as if he was about to tell me something funny, but I couldn't wait. I couldn't let him finish. With a hoarse and trembling voice, I said, "Leo, get on the motorcycle now. Your mom has had an accident. We have to go to the hospital." I saw his smile disappear in a flash, like a light switched off in an instant. He didn't ask anything, just climbed on in silence, his small hands clinging tightly to my waist. He didn't say a word the entire way, but I could feel his fear in the pressure of that embrace. I wanted to turn around, hug him, tell him everything would be okay, but I didn't even dare believe in myself. St. Gabriel's Hospital appeared before my eyes, cold and suffocating. The white building, the strong smell of disinfectant that filled my nose, made me feel short of breath. I led Leo by the hand through the long hallways. My steps hurried but heavy. When we reached the emergency room, I saw Michael standing there, stunned like a ghost. His hair was disheveled. His once pristine white shirt was now wrinkled, the sleeves stained with dark blood. I knew it was Emily's blood from when he had carried his wife here. Seeing my son like that tore my soul apart. Michael, my strong son, now looked like a lost child. When he saw me, Michael ran to me, buried his head on my shoulder, and sobbed like never before. Emily, the doctor said the situation is very serious." His voice broke, trembling as if all his strength had vanished. I hugged him, trying to stay strong, but I was shaking too. Leo, seeing his father cry, also burst into tears. His childish, disoriented voice screamed, "Mom!" The boy clung tightly to Michael's pants, his big eyes full of fear, as if afraid of being abandoned in the middle of this storm. I knelt down and pulled him to my chest, trying to protect him. But how could I protect him when I was drowning in fear myself? The three of us sat on the cold plastic chairs in the hallway. Time seemed to stand still. The strong smell of disinfectant, the dry voice of the speakers sounding over and over. Every noise was like a knife piercing my heart. I looked at Michael, at Leo, and then at the closed door of the emergency room. I wanted to scream, to pound on the door, to do anything to know how Emily was, but I could only stay there, helpless, waiting. Nearly 3 hours passed, feeling as long as a century. Finally, the emergency room door opened. An older man with a serious face came out. He introduced himself as Dr. Peterson, the hospital director. His voice was deep and slow, as if he weighed every word. The patient has suffered a traumatic brain injury and has fallen into a deep coma. We did everything we could, but when she wakes up depends on the patient's will. Those words were a blow to my chest. Deep coma, patient's will. Those phrases echoed in my mind, but I couldn't comprehend them. Emily, the woman who was always radiant and full of life, now lay motionless, suspended between life and death. Michael collapsed. If I hadn't held him, he would have fallen to the floor. His eyes clouded over as if his entire world had crumbled. Leo, terrified, curled up in my arms, his small body trembling. I held him tight, trying to hide my pain, but my tears were already streaming down, silent and impossible to contain. I didn't want Leo to see his grandmother cry. But how could I be strong when my family was breaking apart? A young nurse with a name tag that read Martha approached with a clipboard. In a soft voice, she said, "The family can see the patient through the glass, but please don't make any noise." I nodded. I took Leo and Michael to the thick glass window. Through it, I saw Emily lying motionless among a tangle of wires and tubes. Her face was pale, lifeless. Her lips, which always smiled, were now closed, as if she had gone far away to a place we couldn't reach. Michael pressed his forehead against the glass and cried out in despair, "Love, open your eyes and look at me." His heartbreaking voice echoed, shattering the quiet of the hallway. The nurses rushed to calm him gently, but I knew nothing could ease my son's pain at that moment. I stood there holding Leo, feeling every weak beat of his small heart. I wanted to say something to comfort him, but my throat closed up, unable to utter a single word. That night, I practically had to drag Leo back home. The boy was crying his eyes out. He wanted to stay with his mother, but I couldn't leave him in the suffocating atmosphere of the hospital. I comforted him. I promised him we would come back the next day, though I myself didn't know what awaited us. Michael insisted on staying, curled up in a plastic chair in the hallway, his lost gaze fixed on the room's door. I looked at my son and my heart broke, but I knew I couldn't stay. Leo needed me, the bakery needed me, and this entire family depended on me to stay standing. In the days following that fateful moment, my small house seemed to be covered in a dark, heavy fog. Every morning when I woke up, it felt like a rock was sitting on my chest, making every breath difficult. I have lived for 62 years. I have witnessed partings and deaths, but I had never felt as helpless as I did now. Emily was still there in the hospital, motionless like a statue. And Michael, the son I was so proud of for his strength, was now just a shadow, making St. Gabriel's Hospital his second home. Every day I saw Michael sitting in front of Emily's room, still as a stone figure. His eyes were red, without their former sparkle. During the day, he would stay there, staring at the emergency room door as if by watching long enough. Emily would open her eyes, walk out, and smile at him like before. But at night, when darkness fell, Michael sought solace in alcohol. More than once, I found him sitting alone on a hospital bench, a bottle in his hand, his gaze lost like a tormented soul. One time I arrived earlier than usual and found him lying in the hallway next to an empty tequila bottle rolling on the floor. A young nurse, maybe Martha, approached cautiously and told me in a low voice, "Ma'am, he shouldn't be drinking so much. It's not good for him." I could only nod, suppressing a sigh, though inside I felt like something was suffocating me. I did everything I could to pull Michael out of that abyss. Every morning I got up at 3 o'clock, turned on the small stove, and prepared the freshly baked bread he loved so much. I wrapped it carefully and took it to the hospital, hoping that familiar aroma would awaken something in him, but it was always the same. He would barely take a couple of bites and then leave everything, his gaze fixed on the room's door. "Mom, I'm not hungry," he would mutter in a hoarse voice, as if he had no emotion left. I would look at him and feel like I was breaking inside. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him, to tell him that he had to live, to be strong for Leo, for himself. But I could only collect the dishes in silence, taking them back with a heavy heart. The burden of the entire family now rested on my aging shoulders. I was no longer young. Every morning when I got up, I felt every aching joint, every tired muscle. But I couldn't stop. The small bakery was our only source of income, and I had to keep it running. At 3 in the morning, when the entire city was asleep, I was already kneading dough and lighting the oven. The smell of warm bread used to bring me joy, but now it only reminded me of the peaceful days we had lost. During the day, I tended the shop while checking the clock, then rushed to pick up Leo. There were days when the customers were so numerous I could barely breathe, but I still had to grit my teeth and smile at everyone, even though inside I just want to collapse. Leo, my little grandson, also changed completely. He used to be the sunshine of the house with his radiant smile and endless stories. But now he had become quiet and withdrawn. Every afternoon coming out of school, I would see him sitting silently in a corner of the playground, hugging his superhero backpack tightly, his gaze lost. Once, his teacher took me aside, her voice full of concern. "Mrs. Davis, Leo has been very down lately. He doesn't play with the others. He just sits alone. Is there a problem at home?" I could only force a smile and give a vague answer. "He's just a little tired. Don't worry." But inside, I knew well that Leo was carrying a wound too big for his little heart. I wanted to hug him, to tell him everything would be all right. But how could I promise something I didn't believe myself? Every afternoon, I took Leo to the hospital to visit his mother. It was part of the routine, part of that fragile hope that Emily would wake up, but the scene at the hospital never changed. Michael was still there with an unkempt beard, smelling strongly of alcohol. I tried to keep Leo from noticing, but the boy was more sensitive than I thought. He would quietly take the drawings he made in class, press them against the cold glass, and whisper to his mother, "Mom, today I drew the whole family at the beach. It's you, Dad, Grandma, and me. Wake up soon so we can go for real." His voice trembled as if he were trying to hold on to a dream that was falling apart in his hands. I stood beside him, listening to every word, my heart in pieces. Emily remained there, motionless, showing no signs of response. Michael used to take his son in his arms, and with a broken voice he would say, "Your mom hears you, son. She'll get better soon." But he was the one who ended up crying, and Leo, seeing him, would also break down in tears. I had to rush to comfort him and get him out of the room, even though I was falling apart inside, too. My family's private life, once a source of pride, had now become gossip among the neighbors. One day, while standing in line at the supermarket, Mrs. Rose, an acquaintance of many years, pulled me aside and asked with a curious tone, "I don't see Michael and his wife together anymore. What happened? And Emily, is she okay?" I hesitated for a moment, trying to keep my voice calm. "Emily, she had an accident. She's in the hospital." But Mrs. Rose's prying eyes and the whispers of those nearby made me want to disappear. I clutched my basket and almost ran out, but the comments followed me like needles pricking my pride. I didn't want my family to be the talk of the town, but I knew that in a small neighborhood like this, nothing could be hidden forever. That night, Michael came home stumbling, reeking of alcohol. He looked at me with red eyes and shouted, "Don't tell anyone about Emily. I don't need their pity." His voice was harsh, but I knew that behind that anger was a pain impossible to put into words. I just nodded silently, holding back a sigh, and let him stumble up to his room. Leo was on the stairs, his childish gaze following his father's unsteady silhouette. He said nothing. He just went to his room with his head down, hugging his superhero pillow tightly. Seeing him, I wanted to run and hug him, but I knew nothing could ease his pain at that moment. That night, I was left alone in the cold kitchen, facing a mountain of bills that kept growing. Emily's hospital expenses, Leo's school fees, the bakery's maintenance. Every number was like a cut to my soul. I had worked my whole life with sweat and tears to build a stable life for my family, and now everything seemed to be falling apart. That afternoon, the sun in the city was still relentless. I had just cleaned the bakery, locked the door, got Leo in the car, and prepared for our daily visit to the hospital. The boy was in the back seat, quiet, clutching his superhero backpack, as if it were the last comfort he had left. I wanted to say something to break the silence, but my throat was tight. I could only sigh and press the accelerator. When we arrived at St. Gabriel's Hospital, the familiar, painful scene appeared before my eyes. The hallway was still cold. The smell of disinfectant burned my nose, and the announcements from the speakers sounded dry, one after another. Michael was sitting on the plastic chairs, his head down, dozing from sheer exhaustion. At his feet, an empty beer can rolled, shining under the fluorescent light. Seeing my son like this made my heart sink. Michael was once a man full of life, always laughing and talking loudly. But now he was just a shadow, consumed by grief and alcohol. I motioned for Leo to be quiet. I didn't want to wake his father. The boy nodded, his round eyes full of worry, and followed me slowly. We both approached the thick glass of the room. Emily was there still, as if lost in a deep sleep. The steady beeping of the machine sounded like a cruel reminder that she was still alive but hanging by a thread. Her face was pale with no trace of life, her lips closed as if guarding a secret. I looked at her with a shattered heart. How many times had I stood in this very spot, hoping for a miracle, waiting for her to open her eyes, smile, and say it was all just a nightmare. But it was always the same, the silence, and each time my heart broke a little more. I was about to take Leo's hand and lead him away to escape that suffocating atmosphere when he suddenly tugged at my clothes, stood on his tiptoes, leaned close to my ear, and whispered quietly but with force that pierced my soul. "Grandma, I don't think Mom is sick. She's pretending." I felt a sharp blow, as if someone had slapped me. I turned and looked directly into Leo's clear eyes, trying to speak calmly, though everything inside me was trembling. "Leo, don't talk nonsense. Your mom is very sick. You know that." But the boy didn't argue like he usually did. He lowered his head, his hands shaking as he turned on the old cell phone Michael had given him to watch cartoons. "Look at this, Grandma," he said in a voice so low I had to strain to hear him. The screen flickered on and showed the image of Emily's room. No one else was in the video, just her lying in bed, surrounded by wires and tubes. But then the unthinkable happened. Emily slowly opened her eyes, looked around as if checking to see if anyone was there, and then casually scratched her cheek. A moment later, she even sat up a little, took the glass of water from the table, took a sip, and lay back down, closing her eyes to become motionless again, as if nothing had happened. I stared at the screen, my head spinning as if the entire world had turned upside down. That wasn't a woman in a coma. That was a performance, a fake. I sank into the chair, my hands weak, almost dropping the phone. Leo was beside me, his voice trembling as if he was scared by what he himself had discovered. "I've seen it a few times, Grandma. Whenever no one is here, Mom opens her eyes and looks around. But when you or Dad are here, she stays still. I don't know what she's doing, so I secretly recorded it for you to see." Hearing him, a chill ran down my spine. Leo's innocent whisper, that short video, they were like a lightning bolt that shattered the fog inside me. Emily, my daughter-in-law, whom I had always loved like a daughter, was faking. But why? For what purpose? I quickly put the phone in my purse, trying to keep my voice as stern as possible. "Leo, you absolutely cannot tell your dad about this. Do you understand?" The boy nodded, his eyes shining with fear and confusion. I knew he didn't fully understand what was happening, but he felt the seriousness of it. I hugged him, trying to hide the storm raging inside me. But just then, Michael stirred and woke up. He rubbed his eyes, looking at us with a hoarse voice. "What are you two talking about?" I flinched, shook my head, and changed the subject. "Nothing. Just reminding Leo to do his homework at home." Michael nodded, then pulled his son closer and whispered, "Don't worry. Mom will wake up soon." Leo lowered his head, avoiding his father's gaze. Seeing him like that, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. He was too young to carry this weight, to keep a secret from his own father. On the way home, I drove the motorcycle as if I were floating, my feet not feeling the ground. My mind was a mess. The images from the video replayed over and over like a nonstop horror movie. Leo's whisper, his terrified look, and Emily's motionless face. They were all pieces that didn't fit. I wondered, am I misinterpreting? Is it just an involuntary moment? A body reaction? But deep down, I knew that what I saw was no accident. Emily was hiding something, and it filled me with fear. Not fear for her, but for Michael, for Leo, for my entire family. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, when the first light of day had not yet filtered to the crack in the door. I arrived at St. Gabriel's Hospital earlier than usual, when the hallways were still empty, and only a few on-duty employees passed by in silence. Michael had not yet arrived. Maybe he had gone home to clean up after spending the whole night with his wife. I stood at the corner of the hallway, looking through the window into Emily's room. She was still there, motionless, her face pale as wax. But now, every time I looked at her, I no longer saw the fragility of someone fighting between life and death. Instead, I only saw a veil of mystery, hiding something I couldn't yet figure out. Martha, the young nurse exclusively assigned to Emily's care, was in the room. She was cleaning my daughter-in-law's body with gentle but somewhat mechanical movements. I hid around the corner of the hallway, watching her every move. Martha worked, but her eyes constantly darted outside, as if afraid of being discovered. From time to time, she murmured something so low I couldn't understand, but enough to make me feel uneasy. Something was not right. I knew it for sure. My heart was a tangle of anger and fear, but I told myself I had to stay calm. If I wanted to find out the truth, I couldn't let my emotions take over. When Martha left the room carrying the chart, I took a deep breath and stepped forward. She was bent over writing, not noticing my presence. I tried to keep my voice calm, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "Good morning, Martha. Tell me, in the moments you care for Emily, have you ever noticed anything unusual? For example, does she ever wake up in secret when no one is around?" I pronounced each word carefully, watching her reaction closely. Martha jumped as if I had thrown a bomb right at her chest. Her eyes widened in terror, and the pen she was holding fell to the floor with a sharp clatter. That sound echoed in the silent hallway, confirming that I had hit her deepest fear. "Ma'am, what are you saying?" I don't understand." Martha stammered, avoiding my gaze, unable to meet my eyes. She took a step back, clutching the clipboard as if to hold on to it. I moved closer, my voice firm with no trace of softness. "That reaction means it's true, doesn't it?" I looked her straight in the eye, searching for a crack in her panic. Martha's face was pale. Her lips trembled as if she were about to cry. She sank into the chair, speaking in a whisper almost inaudible. I was just following Dr. Peterson's orders. He asked me to keep the secret. Please, I'm just an employee. Don't involve me in this." That partial confession hit me like a lightning bolt. I stood motionless, feeling as if the floor was opening up beneath my feet. It was true. Emily was not only pretending to be in a coma, but Dr. Peterson, the hospital director, was also involved. I tried to keep my voice calm, though I was boiling with rage inside. "What exactly did he ask you to do? Tell me clearly." I took another step forward, giving her no room to escape. Martha shook her head hard, wringing her hands, speaking in broken sentences. "He just ordered me to take good care of Mrs. Emily, not to tell anyone she had already woken up. I have nothing to do with the rest. I beg you, don't blame me." She looked up, her eyes red as if begging for forgiveness. But I couldn't give in. Not because I want to punish her, but because I needed the truth. I needed to protect my son and grandson from whatever was happening. At that moment, another nurse passed by in the hallway, giving us a curious look. Martha jumped up, picked up her pen, and pretended to resume her notes as if nothing had happened. I turned away in silence, my heart pounding like a drum. Every step out of the hallway felt heavy, as if I were carrying a rock. What Martha had admitted not only confirmed my suspicions, but revealed something worse. This wasn't just a farce by Emily, but a deception backed by someone with power like Dr. Peterson. What were they planning? How could they be so cruel as to deceive an entire family, letting Michael and Leo sink into sorrow? When Michael arrived at the hospital, I tried to remain calm as if nothing had happened. He asked with a tired voice, "Mom, how is Emily? Any news?" I just shook my head and replied softly, "She's the same, son. The doctor says there's no progress." But inside, the fire was consuming me. I wanted to tell Michael everything. Show him Leo's video. Tell him his wife was not in a coma. But seeing his red eyes, his exhausted face, I couldn't. Michael had already lost too much, and I was afraid this truth would be the final blow that would completely destroy him. That night, I tossed and turned in my old bed. The faint moonlight seeped through the curtains and lit up the ceiling, but it couldn't dispel the darkness surrounding my mind. I clutched the blanket tightly, trying to force myself to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, sharp questions pierced my heart. Why did Emily do this? What role did Dr. Peterson play in all of this? And the most terrible question, were all those years I loved and trusted my daughter-in-law just a lie? I felt betrayed, not just by Emily, but by my own naivety. I realized I couldn't solve this alone. I needed help. The next morning, I got up early and took Leo to school as usual. The boy was still silent, hugging his Spider-Man backpack, his gaze lost as if he were trapped in a world he didn't understand. I stroked his head and tried to smile. "Do your best in school today. I'll pick you up early." Leo nodded, but I knew he didn't believe my words of comfort. Seeing his small back disappear behind the school gate, I felt my heart tighten. I had to find out the truth, not just for myself, but for Leo, so he wouldn't have to live in this darkness any longer. I drove straight to the office of Mr. Sullivan, a private detective who had been a friend of my late husband. He was a former police officer whom my husband always respected for his dedication and sharpness. Sullivan's office was on a run-down corner with a faded wooden sign. When I entered, I saw him sitting behind a scarred desk, his piercing eyes looking at me over silver-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Davis, it's been a while. What's wrong? You seem so tense," he asked in a deep but attentive voice. I took a deep breath and told him everything. From Leo's innocent whisper, the unexpected video, to the confrontation with Nurse Martha. I tried to stay calm, but my hands trembled as I showed him the video on my phone. Sullivan watched it over and over, frowning, his fingers tapping gently on the table as he always did. "This is serious, Mrs. Davis," he said in a low voice. "If what you're saying is true, there's a conspiracy going on. I'll help you, but you have to keep this a secret, especially from your son." I nodded, feeling relieved to share the burden, but also heavier as I saw the truth begin to surface. Sullivan promised to start watching the hospital immediately, and I left his office with a fragile spark of hope mixed with fear. That night, I took Leo back to the hospital. The air was as suffocating as ever. The smell of disinfectant hit me, and the constant sounds of machines came from Emily's room. Michael was already there, sitting by his wife's bed, holding her hand tightly while tears rolled silently down his cheeks. Seeing him like that, pain shot through me. Michael, my strong son, the pride of my life, now seemed like an empty man. I wanted to hug him, tell him the whole truth, but every time I met his red eyes, I didn't dare. How could I tell him that the woman he loved might be cheating on him? How could I break his heart even more? I made an excuse to go out into the hallway for water, leaving Leo with his father. As I passed a corner near the nurse's station, I caught sight of Martha talking to a guard. She slipped a thin folder into his hand, her gaze nervous as if fearing being discovered. I held my breath and slowed my pace to listen better. "Give this to him quickly," Martha mumbled with a trembling voice. The guard nodded, put the folder in his jacket pocket, and walked quickly toward Dr. Peterson's office. When Martha turned back, her eyes met mine. She flinched, quickly lowered her head, pretending not to see me, and walked away fast. I moved forward, intending to call her, but the guard was already looking at me, his eyes full of suspicion. I stopped, feeling as if an invisible hand was squeezing my throat. A few days later, Sullivan called me to a small cafe hidden in a deserted alley. When I arrived, he was already sitting in a secluded corner with a stack of photos in front of him. "Sit down," he said simply. I felt my whole body freeze. They were secretly taken photos, showing Emily wearing a patient's gown with a white coat over it. Sneaking out of her room in the middle of the night, she walked with soft but conscious steps, showing no sign of being in a coma. Emily went straight to Dr. Peterson's office. The door slammed shut behind her. The light inside remained on even though it was past midnight. I took the photos with trembling hands, feeling the blood drain from my face. Is this real?" I whispered with a broken voice. Sullivan nodded, his gaze serious. His office is very well soundproofed. I couldn't hear anything, but it's clear something strange is going on. I've watched her for several nights, and this isn't the only time she's done it. I'm going to keep investigating, but you need to be prepared. This could be bigger than we think. I nodded, though my mind was blank. Martha's words echoed in my ears. I'm just following Peterson's orders. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a terrifying picture I didn't want to believe. When I got home, I sat in the dark kitchen, the dim light falling on my trembling hands. Leo was already asleep, but I knew he was still carrying the fear of his mother. Michael was at the hospital, caring for a wife who might be cheating on him. I took out my phone, watched Leo's video again, and thought about Sullivan's photos. Every detail was like a stab, but I knew I couldn't stop. I decided that in addition to trusting Sullivan, I had to find more evidence myself. I couldn't let my family continue to live a lie. I had to protect Michael, protect Leo, even if the price was my own heart shattered into pieces. That morning, I woke up before dawn. I couldn't sleep, not from tiredness, but because doubt and pain consumed me all night. I looked at the clock. It was barely 4 o'clock. Michael, my son, was probably still fast asleep after a night of drinking. It was my chance to do what I had put off for too long. I went up the stairs silently, barefoot, so as not to make a noise. The house was eerily quiet. Only the ticking of the wall clock could be heard. I stood in front of the door to Michael and Emily's room. I gripped the handle tightly, feeling my heart pounding furiously in my chest. I knew I shouldn't do it, that I shouldn't snoop in my son and daughter-in-law's room. But I had no other choice. If Emily was really betraying us, I needed proof, something to protect my family. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The room was still filled with Emily's sweet, piercing perfume, a scent that once seemed tender and familiar. On the dresser, a red lipstick was left open as if she had just left a few minutes ago. These small details pierced my soul. I remembered when Emily first got married, how she carefully combed her hair, how she smiled when trying on a new dress. Had it all been a lie? I shook my head, chasing away those memories, and started searching. I opened each drawer, careful not to disturb anything. Every small noise, even the slight rustle of fabric, made me jump, fearing that Michael would wake up and find me. I checked the dresser, the bookshelves, even under bed, but found nothing but the usual things. Finally, I opened the old wardrobe where Emily used to keep her things. In the bottom drawer, hidden under several layers of silk scarves, I found a bundle of blue folders tied with rubber band. My hands trembled as I opened it, as if I were about to touch a terrible secret. Inside were 2 life insurance policies. The documents were carefully printed with Emily's clear signature at the bottom of each page. The first was a health insurance policy with a clause that would pay a huge sum if the patient required long-term treatment or fell into a coma. The amount stunned me, enough to buy a large house. The second policy was even more terrifying. A term life insurance policy with a payout several times higher, enough to completely change a life. I read it over and over, trying to understand why Emily, a woman with no stable job, had signed such large contracts. She used to ask Michael for money for shopping, and sometimes she would even ask me with some embarrassment to cover basic expenses. So where did the money to pay for these policies come from, and why did she need them? I took out my phone and photographed every page, being careful not to wrinkle the paper. Every time I pressed a button, I felt like I was betraying my own family, but I knew I had no other choice. I put the folders back in their place, closed a drawer, and left the room. But as soon as I opened the door, I ran into Michael. He was there with a suspicious look, his hair messy, his voice hoarse. "What are you doing in my room, Mom?" I jumped, hid the phone behind my back, my heart pounding. "Oh, I was just looking for the old photo album," I answered awkwardly, forcing a smile.